All right, so I'm going to call the meeting to order. This is our regular monthly meeting of the El Dorado Hills Community Council, and September 12th, 2022. With that, I would like team members who are present to please just identify what their particular role is. So let's start with John on the end here.
Yeah, John Bania, District 1 Planning Commissioner and the Infrastructure Lead.
Let's just speak for a moment while I address this.
Okay.
Now I got my mic on. You want me to start over? Yeah, John Bania, District 1 Planning Commissioner and Infrastructure Lead.
Okay, back to me, I assume.
Yep. Over to you.
John Davey, I'm the chair of the El Dorado Hills Area Planning Advisory Committee. And we're resident volunteers who look at development proposed projects in El Dorado Hills and provide feedback to the planning process.
Don Heidel, District 1 Supervisor.
Richard Ross, I speak on good governance relative to how government works, why it works, and other related things like that.
Very good. So with that, we also like to
Dorado County, a charter.
I can barely hear you. I didn't hear anything Cindy said or anything you just said, John, but I believe it's my turn to say yes. Wendy Mae Davis here, your Texas Assessor Appeals Board Director. Proud to have the opportunity to serve.
Thank you. I don't think we had the microphone on here close to us, so hopefully that's better now.
Yes, it is.
All right, very good. Thank you all for your attendance. And so with that, we will move on to item 2, adoption of the regular meeting agenda. Does anyone on the leadership team have any proposed changes to the agenda? All right, seeing none, we'll accept the agenda as presented. We'll move on to item 3, public comment. This is the opportunity we want to give for anyone present, either in the conference room here or on Zoom, who has an item they'd like to bring forward to the community council that's not on tonight's agenda, is welcome to do so at this point. There's microphones in the room, and I think the podium microphone also works. So we just ask that if you are going to speak, that you have a microphone in front of you. Otherwise, even though we can hear it here, the people on Zoom can't hear you. So is there any public comment this evening? Yes.
You can use that if you want to.
As long as it's green. You got the light green.
Yep.
Very good. All right. Okay. Please voluntarily identify yourself.
Okay, yeah, I don't know what the format is, but my name is Kevin Manzer, and family man here, been a resident in El Dorado Hills, and you know, I really thank you guys for, and pardon me for going to my notes. I had to really write this down because it's important to me. And thanks for allowing me some time to share my experience within your district. And it is a district that my family and I do live in. I do think what I have to say has a direct effect on how people feel the district is being managed if they're in my situation. I know that I'm not the first one to express these feelings in regards to the El Dorado Hills Fire Department and its residential permit approval process. I wish I wasn't here sharing these thoughts. Matter of fact, I should be at my 5-year-old daughter's soccer practice right now. I should be with my family, is where I should be. However, I'm here for one reason, and it's because of my family. I know some of the things I'll share will likely cause my approval process to be much more challenging. I feel like pointing out some obvious concerns is often frowned upon and will likely put a target on my back for the department. I hope this doesn't happen. However, I am concerned that it will. But if I help even one family, all this will be worth it. The last house I built was approximately 6 years ago. I worked directly with Dan Scooble from this fire department, and it was a great process. In fact, my permits were approved in 2 weeks, and I built my house in 6 months. 6 months is an important number that I'd like for you guys to think about throughout my story. My last house is on 10 acres, and I actually had to add water tanks to create my own fire hydrant. The plans required were much more complicated and in-depth than my current plans for the permits that I have submitted. Fast forward to today, I submitted my application for the permits back in July, and immediately after submitting with the county, I drove straight here to the fire department. I did this because I want to speak with someone and find out exactly what it is they need for fire submittal and approval. I've heard some unfortunate stories with the process and this fire department, and I wanted to come because I don't prejudge. I'll go through the experience myself and I'll learn. And I wanted to find out exactly what they need for the submittal and approval. I always want to over-prepare and eliminate any potential delays that I myself would be responsible for causing. We bought a lot in a planned community here in El Dorado Hills, thinking it'd be much easier to review, and how wrong was I? I was able to speak with the fire prevention specialist who outlined everything I needed to do. I was feeling good about things. At that time, July 26, he said they are really backed up on permits, but felt with some added staff, they were starting to catch up. He said the approval can take 12 to 16 weeks from the application being submitted. I was shocked to hear this, but still was hopeful. Submitted everything only 2 days after being told what documentation was required. This included having my civil engineer show setback exceptions, which is a new requirement that the El Dorado Hills Fire Department requires. The county website used to track permits is eTrackIt. This site shows when everything was submitted and the due date for each department. The fire department review due date was 8/23/22. You'll see these dates are meaningless and certainly shouldn't be used on any official website. The same fire prevention specialist also mentioned that once everything is submitted, that I would receive an invoice in about 2 weeks that I should pay as soon as I receive it. After submitting all required documentation, I received an email that stated, "Thank you for your submission. An invoice will be emailed within 10 business days." I have a copy of this email here, happy to show any of you. I patiently waited, had not heard back from the fire department. I had sent multiple emails with no response to the general email used for permits. The email is plansubmittal@edhfire.com. Nearly 1 month later, I decided to send the same fire prevention specialist an email, letting him know I was concerned about not receiving that invoice. I sent this email on Wednesday, August 24th. Like I said, 1 month later, even though the confirmation email said 10 days. And this was the day after the due date listed on the website shows. I was fortunate to receive an invoice from the fire department in the amount of $932.15 at 3:50 p.m. that same day. I was appreciative of that. I paid this invoice within 30 minutes. This is obviously a priority to me, and believe it or not, I was excited to pay it. I was excited until I received the following response. "Hi, Kevin. Your plans are now in line for review, and once they begin the review, they will send you the notice of restriction that needs to be notarized and recorded. Currently, reviews are taking approximately 6 months from the date of submission." 6 months. That's why I mentioned earlier 6 months is an important number. I built my last home for my family in 6 months, and I should sit here and expect to believe it takes that long to review my plans and approve them? There's simply nothing reasonable about that type of response and timeline. With that response, it would take over 7 months to get the required permits to start building my home. I tried every avenue possible to discuss the impact that this timeline would have. After multiple emails and attempts, I got an updated timeline of 90 to 120 days. That's 3 to 4 months from now. In best case, the fire department would have taken over 4 months for the review. Speaking with the county building department, who I've spoken with many times, I discovered that El Dorado Hills Fire Department changed the permit approval process a while back, and the building department representative I spoke to was highly against it when they did this. He knew the problems and delays it would cause our community. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but the building department by far has the most comprehensive review of residential plans. This includes grading, structural engineering, electrical, mechanical, and everything in between. And how is it they're able to review so much more detail and be done in 2 to 4 weeks? I'm pretty sure the fire department can learn from their process. A friend of mine knows someone on the board at the fire department and reached out to him on my behalf. At this point, I was just desperate. And if I sat back and just allowed those timelines, I mean, where am I going to be? So it truly would cause a significant financial hardship for me if I have to go this long. As most people know, in construction, the two biggest factors are schedules and budgets. If those aren't properly managed, you're going to fail. Having to wait until December to start my build just doesn't work for my timeline. Not only do we sell our home and are renting, but our lease, it won't work with this timeline. It's not going to allow us to extend beyond the timeline that the fire department is single-handedly tried to put us in. So I would have to move my family into a second rental just to accommodate the fire department's inefficient ways. This board member contacted the fire marshal, and I thought the fire marshal's response was really interesting. I'm going to read it to you. Plan review is not completed until fees have been received. Fees for his submittal were received on 8/24/22, and he should expect approximately 90 days from the date of payment to complete his review. The fees the fire marshal is referring to are the fees I mentioned above. It's the same fees I had to reach out to the department in order to get an invoice, the same fees I paid within 30 minutes of receiving the invoice. The way the fire marshal is responding sure sounds to me like they're making it sound as if they were waiting on me. This simply isn't accurate, and it's misleading to the board members who also are looking for answers. Something else the fire marshal relayed to the board member. Many of our community members have shared with me that they are also facing personal and/or financial difficulty, possibly as a result of sick and aging family members, COVID, inflation, loss of contractors due to delay. Did you hear that? That's coming straight from the fire marshal. Loss of contractors due to delay. The fire department's responsible for this. It has to bother them. I've been in public safety for many years, and my family was as well. I know how it works behind the scenes, and I would feel awful if I was responsible for causing so many families a financial loss and so much stress to these families. That is not the way of anyone in a public safety entity that I've ever been in contact with. I can also confirm that the staff required to review and approve these permits are not the staff you see out on the streets fighting fires. I am not taking anything away from them, and I never will. Many of my friends are firefighters and police officers. On the El Dorado Hills website, it says, our mission, we, the El Dorado Hills Fire Department, exist to serve and protect the community through emergency management. The process is not being managed effectively and is causing financial hardships and emergencies the public just doesn't see. Something must be done. If people don't realize this is now an emergency, then they're being misinformed. The last few years have been challenging for both public and private sector entities. We all know this. We have all had to adapt. Something true of any entity. If they don't adapt, then they fail. This process with the fire department is in a downward spiral, and there's absolutely no accountability for their actions. Somebody has to hold them accountable, and that is why I'm here. If nobody does anything, then they will continue to fail our community until it gets to a point where they just shift the responsibility elsewhere and they wipe their hands clean of it, with no regard to the families who have been affected because of the failed process they have. Who wants to pay my rent and bills for the additional time the fire department is waiting in this process? Anybody? I don't want to either. The money taps into our budget after selling our previous family home to build this new one. As if building a home isn't stressful enough on finances and relationships, why wouldn't they want to be a positive part of this process instead of constantly battling complaints? And I know that's what's happening.
Kevin, can you wrap it up? Because we're not the fire board, but we're listening intently to try to understand your situation. So we can refer information, but we really can't take any action on our part. It has to go through the fire department. But yeah, so if you just wrap up, please, I'd appreciate it.
Okay. So my story isn't really meaningful to any of you guys
It
either.
is meaningful, and it's not the first time we've heard it. So, but again,
But I'm trying to share my story.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you what it's going to do to affect. And I have some more examples of things that they've done recently that really make it clear they don't care. You have to understand that you guys have liability in this because it's your district you're managing. And guess what's going to happen? It's going to cost you guys a lot of money. And I know some things that are happening. I don't think you want to be a part of it. I'm trying to help. I don't think it needs to go to that.
Johnson is standing. I don't know if he wants to respond.
I-
Again, this is a fire department thing. We can get some response, but
How about this? I know that there's a Public Records Act. How about this? I have not been able to get any of these questions answered. How many residential construction permit applications are being reviewed per day by the fire department? How many residential construction permit applications are being approved, first one is reviewed, next one being approved per day? And how many applications are in the queue with the fire department? This doesn't even go to where the fire marshal sent me on a wild goose chase to get these documents notarized, recorded, which I did the very same day, just to get told, you know what, that's not everything you need. You need to go back and you need to add this, which I followed her instructions specifically. And I went the same day and I did it again, spent another $30 having my wife meet me at the notary, driving back up to Placerville, getting it re-recorded again. So even the records department said, no, what you had is exactly fine. You don't need anything else. It's a broken system. I'm feeling what you're saying is deal with the fire department. What do you think we've done? Do you think we haven't done this? So I have a feeling I know where this is going, but I'd be happy to hear from whatever you have to say.
Yeah, absolutely, and I appreciate you coming here and bringing this information up. You're right, the system is broken, but I need to give you some context. First, the Fire Marshal, Krishana Fields, Chief Fields is sitting in the back of the room. Secondly, I will tell you, this is my 4th year here as a fire chief, and coming in as a fire chief, there are a lot of systems that needed to be bolstered up. There's a lot of systems that needed to be changed, and we embarked on that mission early on to do just that. As we started to look at the system, the way our system was built, it was never built for the type of plan review influx that we've received. It was never built for that. But the team did what the team knew. It was a very green team, and they did the best that they could. I'm just giving you this all for context. And so over the years, we've identified those items, and we've got different things that we put in place to help build that team. One of those is bringing on a professional fire marshal with years of experience in a high volume system who has come in and analyzed the entire system and says, yes, this doesn't work. These are the things that we need to change. The old system was a system by which just a bunch of folders were created. And over time, as the system gets bigger or you get a lot of plans coming in, you tend to get lost in that, and that's exactly what happened. The other thing that we did is we have a vegetation management program, and that vegetation management program is very important to the safety of this community. We used to ship those employees off the duties of plan review and inspections, and over 100% in the summertime over to doing the vegetation management inspections. We identified that 2 years ago. That's not a good plan because it puts us behind further and further and further. Then you had this thing called COVID. I'm not putting excuses or blaming. This is all part of the picture. COVID coming in, what the resulting impacts of COVID is there's a lot of expertise that has left the profession. And we reached out and we tried to hire a fire marshal 2 years ago. We were not successful in doing that. So we kept just going and going and going. We hired a retired annuitant who came in. He stepped in as the interim fire marshal, but you can only use that individual for 960 hours and that timed out. We finally hired a professional fire marshal. She's been in place now for a couple of months. She's identified some of those key things that we've had to fix, and we're doing that. But I do want to tell you some of the things that were done, because this is, I'll liken it to trying to pour a concrete foundation without the forms really being set. So you got concrete going everywhere. So we're trying to stay afloat with what we have, but build the system that needs to be so we make sure that this doesn't happen in the future. That's what we're doing right now. We've hired a full-time experienced fire marshal, like I said. We've hired 4 defensible space inspectors, which allow us to focus 100% on the plan review and not shift employees over. We switched to a new records management system, which lets us know exactly where we're at. They're not having to chase files and find them. We're implementing a electronic client portal and plans tracking system that's similar to Track It. That will be tremendously helpful. We'll be launching that here in the next couple of days to weeks. We've restructured the job duties in the community to serve better serve the community in the different areas. We've identified and eliminated inefficiencies in the plan review process. We've completed a community risk reduction analysis and report, and that's helping us guide what is the proper level of staffing that we need in that division to make sure that it functions appropriately. We've updated the fee schedule to make sure that the funding's there to hire the appropriate number of people. We've hired a prevention specialist, which we didn't have before. We've hired a fire inspector who's a retired annuitant who's here working currently. We've hired a special projects retired annuitant. We've hired a plan reviewer, retired annuitant. And this is because those inspectors just don't exist in the workplace. We've tried to go out and hire people. The expertise isn't there. To start with a green inspector, you're talking about 18 months to 24 months at a minimum until they're competent and capable. And so those are the things we're challenges with. We use a third-party consultant to handle the large time-consuming plan reviews, the large buildings. We farm those out. And then we've created a clear step-by-step standard outlining what is required for plan review submittal, and Chief Phil's just completed that. So I tell you that because there's a lot being done, and we're trying to fix the system. At the same time, we're trying to keep the system afloat and get to all those folks that we know we're not meeting the benchmark. El Dorado Hills Fire Department, make no mistake, is known for their level of customer service, and we are absolutely missing the mark in our plan review section. That is why we've taken the steps that we're taking, hiring a fire marshal. That's why I've been directly involved. That's why we have a board ad hoc committee that's been recently established to work on those things. I cannot change the foundation that was laid years ago. But what we can do is work on those things moving forward. We're applying technology. We've got the people in place now. We've got the expertise in place now. It won't be solved overnight. I will flat out tell you that. But I think that time, I know that time is coming down more and more and more every day. I have no problem sitting down and having a conversation with you because I want to know your story better. I know I've got the emails, but we can certainly talk about that. But understand, this is a system that is just, we've had 700 plans that have been submitted this last year. Just talking about that is off the charts, and our agency really wasn't set up for that. In addition to everything else that's going on, a comment that was made about the county, and I'll wrap up real quick here about the county. There's a reason why. The only thing that we took over from the county was residential sprinkler inspections. Why? Because in Serrano we had an issue where they had leaking pipes. Down in Blackstone we had an issue where it was sized improperly and the citizens weren't going to be protected properly. Not only do those systems protect the citizens and give them time to get out, but it protects my firefighters getting in to put that fire out. That was tremendously important, and that was why we made the decision to take on the residential sprinkler inspections and review. At this time, we farm 100% of those out. Those are out to a third party. So that those are the things that we're doing to make sure that we have the additional capacity to do that. I hear you loud and clear. And I'm here to tell you, I'm not making excuses. I know that this is a failure for a multitude of reasons, but we're trying to fix the problems that started 20 years ago while we continue to move down the path to bring it to the benchmark that it needs. That's what I submit to you. I'd be more than happy to sit down with you and talk to you one-on-one.
I tried to do that. I asked to set up a meeting. I wanted to set up a meeting. I've tried everything, you know,
I'm offering that right now to you.
and I appreciate that. How many reviews are there per day of plan submittals?
I don't want to turn this into a fire department discussion, so What I would suggest is you schedule a meeting
We'll
with
schedule a
Chief
meeting with
Johnson and Chief Fields if she participates, whatever, but I think you'll get the answers you're looking for and you'll get the right answers as opposed to something that's an estimate at this point. So I would encourage you to set the meeting, sit down with them and understand and get the answers to the
Do you
questions. you're
think I
asking.
haven't gone to the people that make the decisions and gotten these responses?
There is nobody higher. I am the person that makes the ultimate decision.
Okay, so it
I'm
sounds like
asking
you've got
you
the
for-
responses.
You give me a list, I'll get you your answer. You want to sit down and talk to me? I'm right here.
All right, I'd like
If
to
you
do
have
that.
time now, we can go sit down.
That works.
Right, so.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate your comments. Okay, any other public comment this evening? Okay, Maria. Have you got the microphone? Yeah, there you go.
Would this conversation have been better served at a fire board meeting?
It would have. But
And-
evidently, his comment about going through a board member, I
Yeah.
don't know what that means, but,
If you went through a board member, that board member would have said, bring it to the board. Because they meet here in this room, they have the camera on and it's interesting, but I'm kind of dumbstruck.
I can tell you, my office has received a lot of emails about this same subject, and we have tried to engage the fire department so that they're aware that what we're seeing from the public and recognizing, our planning and building department is having the same kind of struggles in terms of hiring the right people to fill the vacancies, and that creates a backlog. So it's not unique, even to El Dorado County. Other counties are experiencing the same issue, is qualified, trained individuals for certain types of positions are just not on the market at this point. They're busy doing work and there isn't new recruitment at the lower levels coming forward is what I'm seeing. So I don't know how to respond to that. It would have been probably better presented at the fire board meeting, but he has that opportunity too. He didn't choose that opportunity, so. Yeah.
Fire board. A couple things. One, Chief Johnson mentioned that President Bobby Bennett appointed an ad hoc committee to study this issue, community risk reduction. We're having our first meeting tomorrow morning, at 3:00 in the afternoon. A lot of the questions that this gentleman was asking, Kevin was asking, those are on the table because we've asked that. I'm a member of that ad hoc committee, as is retired Metro Fire Chief Captain Jim Hartley as well. So we've got sort of fire expertise and sort of citizen expertise, if you would. And we've got some a robust discussion scheduled for tomorrow. I would also ask, I hope Kevin, I don't want him, if he's not too busy on Thursday, I think it would be important for him to come to the fire department meeting Thursday at 6:00 right here, because I think we need to hear it directly. I mean, I'm well aware of the emails you've been getting and the concerns, and we are making, I think, significant progress, but there's a lot of work to be done, and we have to close that gap from the existing applications in until all the new procedures and policies are in place, so it'll become more transparent going forward.
Right, very good. Any other public comment? Yeah, Ross.
Would it be appropriate, your meeting will be public meeting.
Yes, it's noticed on our website, and it's out there as all our other meetings are.
Probably not a reviewer of the website, however, good chance, most citizens aren't. Maybe letting him know of that subcommittee meeting might give the committee members a little bit of insight from the frustrated developer's perspective. Apparently, he did a fairly good job.
I can, I'll go right now and catch him before he finishes meeting up with the chief.
I think engaging that discussion is appreciated. That's what you have to do, unfortunately. It's just, like I said, there's a lot of people in the same situation. And I think the big push right now is everybody wants to get their permits because they've got their funding light out, but the funding rate, interest rates are going up fast. And so you got to move now, because if you wait 6 months, you may not be able to move forward because the market's outpriced you. So, yeah, Maria.
Kevin said something at the very outset when he said that he should be elsewhere, that he wanted to be with his family instead of being here. And honestly, I think all of us could say the same thing, but we're here and we're paying attention And why is it that people feel that they can come here and complain when they have a complaint? And when they don't, none of this matters. They couldn't care, they couldn't give a fig what you do or what goes on or who to talk to or where to find any information.
Yeah.
And that really, I mean, I understand he's got a family, he's got a child playing a game somewhere, and I understand that it's difficult for everybody, but honestly, I really resent all the time that Tim spends because it's important, but I would like him to be at home a lot more. And I want that on the record.
It is. It's now recorded, so. Unfortunately, it's a balancing act with all this stuff, how much effort you have to put into it. And you hope the systems work well, but we've seen system failures any number of occasions at the county, and you have to go in and fix the system. That's what it amounts to. And forecasting what workload is going to be there is as good as last month when you saw an increase of 5%. So you assume things are going to be like that from the standpoint of what's in the future, and it isn't always like that. There's step changes in demand that happen in every public agency. So how you deal with those is you have to have enough capacity to try to focus things on it. So I'm more encouraged right now to just kind of let the fire department work it, because the one thing I'm concerned about is liabilities, and anybody can file a lawsuit, and I'd rather not get in the lawsuit mode with people. It just detracts from all the staff's time trying to chase lawsuits. PRAs are the same kind of category, but the public has a right to submit a PRA. So the more discussion we can get to that ends well, the better off we all going to be. So that's kind of my interest in it. So with that, any other subjects as part of our public comment? All right. Did we have anybody online?
No.
Okay. So seeing none, let's move on to item 4, because we've had Bill sit over here for some time now listening to all this. So our guest speaker this evening is Bill O'Neill, the El Dorado County elections, and he's here to talk about the work they're doing to prepare for the November midterms and a lot of the frequently asked questions relative to our security measures and the confidence that we have that we're getting good, accurate vote counts and all those kinds of procedural aspects. So Bill, if you'd like to do a little bit more self-introduction, in terms of your experience and stuff, please provide that as well.
I will, thank you. So I'm Bill O'Neill, Registrar of Voters. On the Zoom call also is Linda Webster, the Registrar of Voters. I've been in elections about 20 years. Started it with Sacramento County, became a consultant for many counties throughout the country, primarily in the West Coast. And then worked my way into lots of different areas and aspects of elections, which I really enjoyed. One area I never got into was tabulation, but certainly worked with all the tabulation companies. And then I finished out my career with the company I was with before I came to the county, Runbeck Election Services, and I started there managing the nationwide deployment of ballot printing machines. And then I started a division where we did cybersecurity analysis after the 2016 election, cybersecurity analysis for counties throughout the country. We did some statewide analysis in St. Louis and Texas, Louisiana, Texas. So I got into the cybersecurity aspect of it because I've always been a technology guy. And then I was fortunate, and I do mean fortunate, I felt very honored to be selected to be the registrar for El Dorado County. This is my home county. I've spent most of my life here. I was born and raised in Sacramento, but started coming up here and was a member of the El Dorado Jeep Herders starting in the mid-'80s, and hiked all of every trail that's out there. Had a little company when I did guided hiking trips through Desolation, and just this has always been my world. El Dorado County is my world. Just actually moved from the town of El Dorado to El Dorado Hills, so I'm just moved to the fire station. The fire station is one of our vote centers. Linda Webster, the assistant registrar, has been with the elections department 17, 18 years. She knows everything there is to know about elections. She's our backstop, and she She's amazing in everything that she does. We could not do what we do without Linda. Over the last several years, and after the 2016 election, there was concerns about hacking. Primarily, then it was a cybersecurity concern. And then as we kind of made our way into and through the 2020 election, it became more than just a cybersecurity concern. It became, is vote tallying correctly? We know what's on the machine software-wise. Are the people working in the office trustworthy? So it's that whole security component has expanded even more. So I've got just this little presentation I'll walk through with you guys. And feel free to ask questions as we go along. I find it's best to do that. So integrity and trust, the way we get there in elections is through transparency is a word that's thrown out by everybody. Every government organization says transparency, and we're going to be the most transparent ever, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, that's all fine and good until you put cardboard up on the windows, or you take something down from your website, or somebody comes to see something and you turn them away. We have never done that. One of the things that attracted me to this elections department, having started, I first worked with them in 2005, was the people. Bill Schultz, Linda Webster, Daryl Zitzelberger, the folks in the office have always been 100% transparent. You would have it no other way. So when this opportunity came up, I really wanted to be a part of this organization. So transparency truly is the first step to building integrity and trust. We achieve that in 3 different ways. The first way is always available to the public. And I hope you ask around and talk to people, and we have never, ever, one time, ever turned somebody away that came into our office and said, I don't trust you, I'm not sure about the equipment, I don't believe what you're doing. We tell them, come in, we'll show you. We're always making time to do tours. During the 2020 presidential election in November, we probably gave over 120 tours, probably had over 150 people. They would come in, some people, and this has gone on through the last several elections, but we call them now the primary. Some people will come in and they'll spend hours and hours every day, and they'll spend days and days just watching, asking questions. And we're happy to have them. We like getting company. We're in the basement, so having people come see us is a good thing. So the public can come anytime. It's that accessibility that proves the transparency. It's also achieved through education. On our website, we've got one section that's called election integrity. On that website, on that page, I've got links to videos where in the November 2020 presidential, I did video walkthroughs of the entire process. This is where the ballots come in. This is why they go through this machine. This is the bins that we have, how we extract to ensure the secrecy of the vote, how we open them, how they go into the tabulation room, how they're tabulated and audited. So those videos are on the website that show the process. There's also papers up there about the Dominion voting system, certification process that we have to go through. Mail ballots, there's a lot of myths out there about what a mail ballot is versus a absentee ballot versus a permanent absentee ballot. So I've written papers about all of these things that help educate people on what the truth is about that. Drop boxes, we use drop boxes. If anybody's seen the movie 2000 Mules, there's a lot of misinformation that was in that movie. And so I spent a lot of time, and I get that people they see a movie and they go, oh my gosh, this is true. So my job and our job in elections is always educating people. That's not how the process works. Here's how the process works. I'm working on more videos that's just focused on part of the process. There's also a link on there to our election cycle. So right now it's got all of the dates up there that list when we're doing logic and accuracy tests. It's a really critical part of the process. We invite people to come in and watch. We will answer all their questions. They can be within 5 feet of the equipment. They can see what's on there. They don't need to bring binoculars. We've had people do it. We get them as close as we can while still maintaining security. So we encourage that, and while they're there, we really encourage the educational component. It's also achieved through empowerment, a voting advisory committee. This is something that I've mentioned before several times, and I've wanted to start. The but other things came up over the last couple of years that just didn't allow us to bring people together. So we weren't able to start it. That's my goal. January 2023, I'm going to put together a voting advisory committee. When we selected our voting system, we used essentially a voting advisory committee. There were representatives from the Republican Central Committee, Democrat Central Committee, League-winning voters. We had 2 voters just from the public. Hey, you want to be on this committee and help us vote voting system. Members of the county, IT department, security experts, and election experts. They selected the system. I didn't pick the system. I said, here's what's available. We got quotes from the vendors. They went through all of the quotes. They sat down and went through a full day of demonstrations with the system, hands-on. There were only 2 systems available. They went through it. They made the decision. That was their, and I'm very proud of the work they did. It was a unanimous decision. Voted 9-4. 9 for Dominion, 4 for the Hart system. That was a good outcome, I thought. And the 4 said, I can live with Dominion. I'm very happy with that as well. So that's what I want to do with this voting advisory committee. Meet once a month, especially during next year, 2023, because we're gearing to the presidential. They're going to go through education. They're going to learn what's real and what's not real. They're going to tell us how to communicate with the public. One of the big things is we have to do outreach. We have to. Don't do outreach. People don't know what's going on. Conspiracies and other things build in a vacuum. So I really want to get this voting advisory committee going. So next year it's going to be big. Yes, please.
Sorry, yeah. I don't know if this works or not, but anyway, I think people can hear me. I met you many years ago, I think, when you first started. Didn't you start with Dorado County about 4 or 5 years ago? Or yeah, because you were doing some really, I thought it was really great outreach to the colleges, you know, to educate, you know, some of the young people and so on about voting and about, you know, our process and so on and so forth. And I thought that was really great. And I hope that, I know, you know, you're just talking about outreach. I think outreach is so important because these venues are really important. But as you can see, we don't have many people here. And there's so much that needs to be done in terms of educating people because I'm finding so many people that really don't understand the process and they're really misinformed. And because of all these things that have happened with all the disinformation that's out there, it's really incredible. And I'm afraid that it's going to keep people from voting. That's what concerns me. And
That's the intent sometimes, by the way.
oh, of course it is. Of course it is. You know, but, you know, there's a great, you know, I think it's wonderful that you're looking at the outreach and I'm wondering, I think it would be great to have this voting advisory committee because then you have little soldiers that could go out in the community and really spread the word. And I volunteer for that myself. But I think that, you know, we just need to have people that can go out and speak to all these different kinds of things and talk to people, CSD meetings, whatever, so that we can educate people because I just find it's just outrageous what's out there. I really appreciate you coming. It's really timely.
You know, when you were talking about that, one of the things is, so I've got 2 kind of pet projects. Things that are really important. One is kids and 2 is community service. So we had a decent outreach to the high schools, but some high schools were kind of, you know, we don't have time, we don't want to talk about it. So that was one of the things that started to push within the department, and we spent a lot of time on high school. A lot of
Wonderful.
We offer all the time to every high school. We'll come out to your civics class, your government class. We'll talk all about the election process. I'll try not to bore them. And then the junior colleges, we've got a vote center at the junior college up in South Lake Tahoe, and we had one at the Folsom Lake College, but it didn't get used. I couldn't figure out why.
Yeah, I wondered about that myself because I've heard that too, and I wondered what the problem was there. There's some sort of a snafu. I don't know what. But
This turnout was so low there, but that's another thing that we really want to do is get the college kids because they have a more flexible school schedule.
But you were speaking at Sac State, I think, before and talking to those students, which I think was great. And
They actually accepted
Mm-hmm.
That was part of the grant.
Mm-hmm. Great.
So, yeah, and that's one of the things that I want to consider having some.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Exactly. That's great. Thank you. Yeah.
So the big thing around security, and I could bore you guys to death with cybersecurity, capable of it. And I didn't know, I apologize. There's a lot has been done around it. One of the first things I did in September of 2020, we did a full cybersecurity audit by the company I used to partner with, because they are incredible. They do military grade cybersecurity and work at all the military. So I brought them in, and we did a full audit for us. We've implemented the recommendations. Our tabulators, despite what's out there, are not on the internet. And when people come, I can literally lift the ceiling tiles and show you there's no network. And there's none coming out of that room. And when I had the room designed in 2005, when I was working in Salt Lake County, I had them put a hard system. So we've got drop T-bar ceilings like this in the rest of the office, tabulation is a hard. So to get into it, you can go up to the T-bar, you got to break through the hard system. Our IT director, Tanya DeJono, has done a move. She's brought in a CISO. She's brought in so much software to protect our network. I have secret clearance from when I was doing cybersecurity before, so I have access to some of the stuff before it comes out publicly. We get daily and weekly threat updates from EISAC, which is the Election Infrastructure Caring Group. There's some amazing people at EISAC. We participate in all the California Secretary of State's office. I actually ran tabletop exercises before I came to the family. And then I participate in all the FBI, DOJ, and DHS meetings. One of the things that's changing a little bit in this environment, and it's not just cybersecurity, it's not physical security. We've always had good physical security, but we have to continue to grow that. So our physical security in the office is part key access to the office of the warehouse, and then we have additional limited access to our tabulation. This is part of the access to tabulation. 24/7 camera monitoring. We have 3 cameras in tabulation, cameras in the warehouse, 1 in the lobby area, and then for this election, we've added 14 more cameras. They're going to be at every vote center, not to watch voting, they'll be covered during voting, but when the vote centers are closed, the cameras will be focused on the cages where we lock all of our equipment, so that we have security monitoring around the cameras. And they all have motion detection. I can tell you I learned a lesson on that. About 3 o'clock in the morning, my phone started going off like crazy. There's somebody in our tabulation. And I get on there, I'm like, oh my gosh. Well, there was a spider that a little web that went for the camera. And for the next 4 hours, I was getting alerts every 5 minutes. That little guy was that. So now we've learned how to set up the zone. We added 1 portable camera that I'm hoping to be able to move around the office to watch different parts of the process. And we can also watch the simple location. We have a sheriff's deputy in our office on election night. We got a sheriff's deputy escort from South Lake Tahoe who can bring the ballots back election night. And then, of course, we work with South Lake Tahoe, Placerville Police, and El Dorado County sheriffs. So they know when our vote centers open, where the locations are, the hours of operation, et cetera. So they're ready. Dropbox security. We have manned and unmanned drop boxes. I know some people will like cameras in the Dropbox. Some places it's not possible. We have 7 drive-up drop boxes. Some of them that are county facilities, we can put cameras. The one that's across the way in the park and ride parking lot, we can't figure out how to cost effectively get a camera off the box. But in the end, the boxes are bolted to the ground. We've got 3 keys to open them. And they're picked up by 2 people. Ensure the integrity of all the ballots back. The voting system is locked at all times in our warehouse and in cages. We have a cage for voting. All the systems are tested prior to every election. To me, and I tell this to everybody, the 2 most critical parts of the election, not the tabulation. It's before the election, we test every piece of equipment. We run a
you know what the results should be, to compare those results to what comes out of the system, it has to match. That means our system has to, yes.
Well, you're talking about drop boxes. What if someone is really mischievous or worse, would it throw something flammable in? With those folks that be lost, that's it?
You know, that's unfortunate. I'd love to tell you that. The slots are real narrow, so it doesn't let you go in there. If somebody really wants to take this. It hasn't happened. One time, no. Because it hasn't happened. But when we look at the risk analysis of it, kind of lower it, medium high risk, low probability, love to figure out something. We thought, quite honestly, that library, something common, that a drive up drop off. And they said, careful, he did. Scratch, hot dog, garbage, they drop everything from the drop. So be careful, and have to be out. So people were terrified. Never had it. I love it. Get all out of that. So, and, you know, the big sign on it, crime, all that stuff. Destructive, going so far we can go. Someday, we're hoping technology will allow us to have a. Right now.
Well, can you address the voter verification? If you were to drop a ballot in the box and you don't get a notification that it was received, you could then suspect that, well, something may have happened, particularly if there was a fire. I guess I'm trying to follow the fire thing. Would you be able to identify the voters who said they submitted a ballot and didn't, to find out if they dropped it in that particular box, and then would you allow them to resubmit?
Yes, that's a great question. So we have contingency plans actually for that. So if somebody does something to a Dropbox, we'll know the next day when it goes. If there is an issue, if it gets burned, if it gets filled with water, whatever, we will do everything we can to identify whatever is left in there. The next step we're gonna do is we're gonna send a postcard to every voter that's within, I think our thing right now is 5 miles of that Dropbox. And then we're gonna start trying to make phone calls.
Okay.
Did you drop a ballot? Did you drop a ballot? So we've got this outreach campaign around if there's damage to a Dropbox, you know, in the greater community, but more specifically that, you know, that 5 mile radius. And then using what we can out of that Dropbox.
You know, one thing also that you have on your website is that you can go in and find whether your ballot was received or not.
Yes.
And I would really highly suggest that everybody do that, and then they wouldn't have that issue. If it did get burnt and did get received, then they could say, oh, hey, I dropped my ballot in so-and-so, and then you can respond back to them, you know. But they really need to use that system.
Yeah.
That's a great point. The system on our side is called ballot track. We verify every signature. The presidential, we verify 110,600. We have a system that automatically does it. Anything that it doesn't automatically accept, it
goes to a human, and then we have 2 to 3 levels of review of that. So the whole idea behind 2,000 mules is you're stuffing a ballot box. You're not. If to stuff that ballot box, that drop box, you have to also be stuffing a voter registration. Because if you're submitting 10 things from the same person, only one's coming. If you submit 10 things from 10 voters, they better be real voters. And you better forge their signatures perfectly. And a lot of people don't realize that. And every election will have a few people that will try to do something. This last election was the most I've ever seen. I think we had 5 people. A couple of people who passed away after the ballots had been mailed. We have to accept those. Their signature match. A couple of people passed away right before we mailed them. We got ballots back for them. Turn that over. There were obviously 4 signatures in our system to get out. So we turned that over to the VA. Tabulation security and it's again this room is not connected to the internet. Only 3 people have card key access to that room. Anybody that goes in has to sign in. We've got temporary staff. Some staff that have been coming to help us for 20 years. We have one lady that just retired. She's been coming with us for 30 years. We love to use our temporary staff for the same people. Over the course of time, we build relationships with them. We know that we trust them. They know us. They know our level of expectation. They're able to walk in and get to work very quickly. We do training with them before every election process starts because we have an election in 4 months. The security around that is really, really important. So that kind of question? Yes.
What are your views on vote harvesting? Ballot harvesting.
So I've got a real mix on this, and I'll explain why. I like the idea of only a family member or somebody who lives in your house returning, just how it's kind of always been. That's the way the law literally read, was a member of your household or a family member to return your ballot. So I would send my ballot in with my wife, or I'd take my kid's ballot in. Where it got, the best way to put it, where it got off track, in my opinion, it was 2016. 2016-17, the governor signed a bill saying anybody can return anybody's ballot. Well, the reason behind that was, if I've got a neighbor who's invalid or bedridden or can't get out to return their ballot and they vote by mail, I can go pick it up and take it in. And I thought that was a great idea. Supported that. And those types of things happen. You have friends, neighbors that are helping them out. Neighborhood voting party, and everyone gets their ballots together. Where I hate it is people now go out door to door and collect ballots. That's okay and it's safe, unless the people have not signed their envelope, sealed their voted ballot inside. That happened in North Carolina. They'll hand it over their envelope with their signature and an unmarked ballot and some voted forms stuck in the envelope. They got caught. How many times does that happen? So that's where I have kind of a love-hate relationship.
I think California is California one of the few or the only state in the union that's legal?
We might be the only.
Right.
Here, sure. Very, very.
Now, I won't get into 2,000 mules. However, you say that things are incorrect or misinformation, and I don't disagree with that. I haven't seen it and critiqued it myself, and I don't have the expertise you do. However, in respect to the integrity that you can ascribe to this county, you can only ascribe to this county. So, and certainly you're a smart enough guy to understand there certainly were some irregularities in some of the swing states, which I'm sure, based on your experience, raised some concern from your standpoint, which I hear, a lot of the states are tightening up those loose ends, whatever they might be, and that would vary from state to state. But certainly, there's always been voter fraud. I've got serious concerns about ballot harvesting, that introduces way too much, and maybe I'm an old folksy, but I didn't have too many problems, going down and actually voting. And I think this COVID was kind of this perfect storm to, for those few people that wanted to cheat the system, gave them a perfect opportunity to do so. And are we, as a county, and I'll get back to our county, because that's what we're here for. And I'd love to talk to you about some of that other stuff, which I'll do privately. Is there going to be any efforts to get back to, hey, you go to your balloting place and, and that's where you vote? Or are we going to be, this going to be a permanent situation? Because my wife has always voted absentee, and I think that's a great system and everything. And maybe the voting thing, where everyone is mailed one, will get there at some point, but is this our future? It's all going to be mail-in balloting?
This is, yeah, this is, it's not. And I'll tell you, before we switched over to the vote center model, we have had in this county for years, 94% of our turnout. And only about 6% was still in person. And that was when we had polling booths. We had 125 polling booths. Serves some of the vote. It became not cost effective. Have that many locations to serve such a small population. So when the idea of vote centers came along, vote centers are extensions of our office and do a lot more than. So it opened up that opportunity to people. That was a choice for the county. Let's serve groups. So that was one of the other things that was what chose is the educated more vote centers. So it was a choice to start county. And that wasn't the thing. And then it just forward and did that process. In 2020, they said because of COVID, we're gonna make this a 100% every year ballot. That wasn't in the for a lot of reasons. There are counties out there that still have their county's best served precinct. Well, now they're mailing ballots to 100% of the population. Then they're opening thousands of precincts. So their cost went through the roof for, in my opinion, no great reason. And they weren't, it was an unfunded mandate, not given anything to help them. Incredible
Well, it's
cost
new.
was shoved on. I hope you never go the way, or it's great, they're all mail, Washington, okay, go do all mail. I hope that never happens. I love the idea, because I remember, I was a kid, I'm sure everybody here does. I remember going over to our neighbor's garage. And if you sense it,
Yeah.
comes from important. And I took my kids, I voted by accident, but when my kids come of age, we would make that vote.
Right. Well, and I do it for two reasons: to thank the poll folks there who volunteer to do that. And also I have a personal form of protest. I actually show my ID and I make them look at it. So that's my form of protest and I'm sticking to it. So, but thank you for your time and stuff.
Yeah, no problem. And that kind of leads me to the second thing that's so important is the community service organization. I was under the line for a number of years. So when I got this position, I said, we're gonna do this adoptive vote center thing because CSOs have a difficult time raising funds and they're always working really hard, but we're paying people to be there. So we opened it up to community service organizations to come in and do it. One of the things I told them is the vote center yours. Make it a great community experience. On the little line where the Elks and others can make it their hometown community votes. Because I think that's, for me, a big part of it.
Any other leadership team members that have questions at this point?
Yes.
Go ahead, Richard.
One thing I did forget, through which branch of the county government is your office?
Straight to the board.
Straight to the board. Second question. Do you know the post office? ballots, are all ballots counted?
Every single ballot. There are, the only exceptions are if we get a ballot back, the signature on the envelope and it doesn't match, send them a postcard, they can sign that postcard and send it back. If that signature matches, we'll open it. We will occasionally, last election, about 100 ballots that we never accepted. The person never came in with those ballots. Every other ballot that we get in our door, we've got this saying that was started by Joseph Berger, no ballot left behind. We do that. If you watch the videos online, this is how we do that. We count every ballot. Never hold a ballot out.
Do you count every ballot, even if they're write-in, the positions for office?
We do, but it has to be a qualified write-in. So a lot of people will write in, my dog's from Mickey Mouse, Ralph Nader. Mickey Mouse beats Ralph Nader in almost every election. So if it's not a qualified write-in, we note that there was a write-in, but it wasn't qualified. So it might show in the report 212 write-ins, but only one qualified write-in. People will sometimes fill in the bubble for a candidate and vote for John Smith, then they'll fill in the write-in and write John Smith. That counts as a vote for John Smith.
The reason I asked was superintendent of schools in the county, there was only one candidate. So I wrote my name in and voted for myself. But when the statistics came out, it showed that he got all the votes. So
You're not a qualified write-in. So to be a qualified, who is, you have to come into our office, fill out all the same candidate paperwork that every other candidate fills out. If there are qualifications for that office, then you have to meet those qualifications. Not a lot of offices have qualifications, some do. And you submit all of the paperwork just like any other candidate. So if you don't do all of that, there'll be no vote for you.
is there instructions like that on the ballot?
No, not on the ballot, but on our website. There are instructions on how to be writing.
Yeah, because I found that I got a couple of votes for auditor and I was looking for my name to show up.
We did that, honestly, every election. I get text messages, Facebook messages, hey, I know I voted for myself. I would love to give you the vote. I voted for my dad. I'd love for him to get the vote, but if you have to, there's a whole legal process to become a qualified writer.
I did not vote.
Are all California election officers uniformly overseen by some element in the state government?
Yeah, so the California Secretary of State's office is in charge of running elections for the state. So we are led by the elections code. The code book's not that thick. That is our primary responsibility, everything in the election code book, the California Constitution, the county charter. So we are guided by all of that. And then the Secretary of State's office ensures that we're doing our jobs. If somebody calls, anybody here could call and file a complaint, and they will send that complaint to us, and then we'll investigate that. So they're responsible for ensuring everything's run well. Then they're also responsible for, we transmit our results to them on election night electronically. Then we have to get on the phone with them at the end of the night and go through them one at a time to make sure that they recorded it correctly. And they post it, and then they pull all of the results together. So all of the state results, state office. And we as a county are responsible for verifying when they post.
I'm impressed by the security measures that you've alluded to here in the county's offices. Are many of those measures basically not mandated upon you, but what you've all initiated? So in other counties in the state, it still could be substantially variable.
Yeah, the counties have the authority to handle their security however they want. The processes, like how we've got our process for handling incoming ballots. The law tells us what has to be done. We figure out how. So it varies county to county. I will tell you, I've worked at probably 40 states. California has the best process. I have tried with other states that I've gone to, and I won't name other ones. They will not, they don't talk to each other. The counties within the states don't talk to each other, and they won't accept, like, I'll go in there and say, here's an awesome process. So used in other counties. And they go, no, we don't do that. So it can be different within the state, but the organization in the state is very, very tight. As a matter of fact, we're hosting the state organization in December. The conference is going to be in South Lake Tahoe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Bill, before we leave this, remind us of what we can expect on election night, how quick the returns will come back, the fact that votes have been submitted initially well before the actual election night will be recorded and posted, but give us a reminder of how quickly those returns will come back.
That's a great question. So we mail the ballots, we'll mail them out on October 10th. Actually, we're going to drop them off before because of Columbus Day. We will start receiving mail ballots back in generally about the second week, about a week or so after we mail it back. We'll start opening and tabulating. Our goal is by election night at 6 p.m. We have tabulated every ballot that we've received in-house up to 6 p.m. the night before. This last election, we tabulated every mail ballot we had in-house up to 3 p.m. on election day. So then we release those results. We don't look at them. Nobody looks at them by law. We release those results as soon after 8 p.m. as we can. So we'll run the report at like 8:01. We'll look at them, make sure everything's good, the report is laid out so that it makes sense, because this is all stuff we can't look at ahead of time. Just make sure the date's in the right spot, showing all the information. We didn't misspell governor or anything like that. Then we will release those reports right away. So usually by 8:10, we release the first round, and that is all the mail ballots that we. Then election night, we get all the ballots back that have been voted in person, and we have to tabulate those by law, election night. So as vote centers start returning to our office, we tabulate those voted in person ballots. Now, we've also received ones leading up to it because we have vote centers open for 11 days, 4 days. So we tabulate all of those. So by about midnight on election night, everything we received in our office the day before, and everything voted in person is tabulated. We release those results. Now, what has been, the change has been, is we get a lot of ballots returned on election day at a vote. And those are all ballots in envelopes. We simply cannot open it, and it's been 35,000 that dropped off, 36,000, 20,000. We can't process those election night, just physically cannot get through that because they have to go through our system, they have to be checked in, the signature checked out, to be open, they have to be prepared, and then tabulated. So that's what happens after the election. Generally, on election night, it used to be how the results come out is pretty much, the absentee is pretty much going to tell you how it's going to go. That's changed because the pattern of who's voting later is. So we've actually had elections where we're doing those other 30,000 ballots 3 or 4 days after the election. And in close contests, it's split them. And that's happened across the country. Because people are dropping their ballots off in envelopes on election day. So that next week we are processing. Then we're doing all of the provisional ballots, anything signatures that didn't match, we're trying to get a hold of people and have them come in through those signatures. So we spent another 3 weeks kind of wrapping it up.
To get to the certification date, right? Or, yep, as soon as you can, so yeah.
Yeah, but our goal by Friday after the election is to pretty much have 99.8%, 99.9% ballots. They're all tabulated and built from our website by 5 p.m. Friday afternoon. But 80% of the ballots are election, maybe 65, 70% of the time are all done.
Very good.
Question, and what, relative to that is, how many ballots do you receive, let's say, at least a week prior to the election?
It's the first week after the mailing, they'll be 50,000. And for the next 2 years, and then after before the election, we'll get probably about percentage-wise, probably 45. Depending on the election, obviously, one election, 45. But that week before the election,
Bill had a question?
Mr. O'Neill, I'm Bill Knox. I also live in Tulsa. I'm sure I echo everyone's. I use fibers. Calculation, all of that. Growing up, that's not something I ever heard of or considered. I'm sure you can agree with that. So this is very informational, practice. What I wanted to ask, your experience working with, certainly with Oklahoma County, but with perhaps other counties, have you found that El Dorado County, thanks to your expertise, to do things differently? And if so, how so? And also, you have, let's say, coordination with people like yourself in Amador County, in Placer County, in other counties. And how does that work?
Great question. So,
Thank you.
I never thought cybersecurity. No. And being a registrar of voters, gosh, we were running elections. And suddenly now it's physical cybersecurity. We have to become an infectious disease expert. And then last year we were fire experts. Right? Having the middle of the recall. So El Dorado County has always, and my first experience here was in 2005, they hired me as a contractor to help select and implement the voting system. El Dorado County has always been stellar. I inherited one of the best offices in the state. California as a state, I worked with and worked for about half the counties as a consultant when I was doing election consulting. Some of the most amazing people I've ever met. A lot of what I learned, there's this one woman that was a registrar down in Santa Cruz County. She just retired, now she's running for state assembly primary. Gail Peller, one of the most incredible people when it comes to transparency and honesty. She always said, there's no perfect election, and there's always attempts to solve it. I wish I could guarantee different, but I can't. And her honesty about that has always inspired me. Working with El Dorado County, they have always been amazing. And Joseph's just incredible at what he was doing with mail ballots and VIPs before anybody else. It was very innovative. And like I said, when this opportunity came up, I was thrilled to do it because of the department. As far as interacting with others in other counties, the guy down in, one of the main people down in Amador, Mark Hammergren, I've been working with him for almost 20 years. Placer County, Brian Ronco, he's the registrar, first before the registrar there. He and I went to high school. So it's a really small world. When you get into elections, it's a small world. The counties themselves, we've got something called ElectNet, this election network, where it's an email string. Somebody will send out an email, hey, I got this candidate, they're trying to do this and they need that. Who knows how to handle this? And they'll get 15 replies from others. Here's what you do, here's the election code, here's how you, or here's a process that we use. We have meetings twice a year. One of them is called New Law, where we cover all the new legislation. Everyone gets together, we talk about the legislation, how to as well as cover other topics. And then we have a summer conference, which, like I said, is going to be in South Lake Tahoe next year, that we're going to host. And we have breakout rooms, cover everything. We handle petitions, budgeting, to new laws that are on the books. And it's an opportunity for everyone to get together, put names and faces together. California has the tightest knit by far, and I've worked in, like I said, probably 40 states. California is by far the tightest election community in the country. I learned that's just, I'm not in there, but I'm happy to be here doing that. Even despite, people can doubt us all day long, that's their right. Heck, if you didn't doubt, I wonder what you're thinking. So I enjoy the conversation where I can share what I know and deal with their.
I just also want to say that I have volunteered with California Roads in El Dorado. That's all we've been doing a lot of, but especially with related to elections. When we have election center or voting center, people come in and they want to know anything about what goes on with balloting process in that building. It's a pleasure to be with. Anyway, that's all.
Yeah.
Two things it brings to mind that I can barely remember, but Tim and I had the voting center precinct in our garage many lifetimes ago. It's really incredible. I can't believe we actually did that. We did it for several elections. And, they drop off the paper ballot thing where you stood and you voted, and they gave us all the supplies, and somehow they trusted us at the end of the night to drill a hole through the remaining unused ballots, pack it all up, and actually get in the car and go to somewhere in Los Angeles and drop off our boxes. And that was really easy peasy. And then I realized this is a really micro question. I think this was, nobody thought anything of it. It was amazing that people found our house, but I guess we're the only people to volunteer to do this. But fast forward, I think, to 2020, and this was a time of turmoil. It was a presidential election, I think. I heard from people around the country how long they had stood in line. We just went to our library just to drop off our ballot. And I noticed a friend was also volunteering, and I said, how is it besides the line was going on forever around the library? And she mentioned there were several men standing around patrolling our polling place. Tim said I shouldn't use the word thugs, but that's what they look like. El Dorado Hills at our library, there were at least 2 men, and honestly, they didn't look like people that you would see at our Safeway, at our Nugget. They were just patrolling in front of the library. I don't know, were they there to intimidate? And
Proud of their candidates, which is great, love that, enjoyed that. We have a law to uphold. You cannot electioneer, campaign for somebody, have even a hat on or a shirt within 100 feet of a polling place. Well, there were parades where they had flags and banners. And it happened on Main Street where we had a vote center. There's no way that it's 100 feet to go out there and say, you can't do this. We're not trying to infringe on free speech. It's just we have a law to it. And I wish I would have known that there were people that were looking intimidating or anything. I would have just asked them what they're doing and just to make sure they weren't trying to. That is.
because I would never have really noticed it, except that we had a friend working that day, a volunteer, and she pointed them out, which meant that she, possibly other volunteers, noticed these people standing around, kind of hands in their pockets, sort of swaggering, just to make sure that everyone felt that they had a right to be there. And so I make that comment that for your volunteers, if they see that, to pick up the phone and call you right away, or call the sheriff, or call whoever it is they're supposed to call. Because it was really creepy, because as you say, this was in El Dorado Hills.
Do you have instructions that go into the voting centers that give your your mobile number so that if somebody sees something that isn't quite right, they can get a hold of you quickly?
We do, and we're actually increasing the training on that.
Okay.
Next year, we're gonna develop a whole new program around what to look for in the contact. Just because, that's become more of an issue.
Well, it's to see something, say something. I mean, but you got to get it to the right person. It doesn't do any good if you hold it internally and nobody responds. So, yeah.
Yeah, we've got a hotline.
Okay, very good.
They call our number, anything. And we also are out. And they'll call, we've had calls before.
Any final questions? Yeah.
I know we're trying to wrap up, but one thing that I've noticed about where we discussed business redistricting in this area, where you've changed the districts, and so many people are confused about this. You would not believe how many people I talk to. Like, I'm voting for so-and-so, and I say, that's Folsom. That's another district. They don't understand that, we were always in Congressional District 04. And now we're in Congressional District 05. And were you involved in the congressional redistricting at all? Okay, because, oh my gosh, I cannot believe what they did. But, anyway, it's so confusing. And, maybe, John, there's some outreach that, someone can do.
Well, your ballot tells you who you can vote for within your right. So at some point,
But I'm talking about when you come up to the election. A lot of people, they don't read that stuff and they don't know. I still have people telling me that they're going to vote for Kermit Jones, who's in 05.
right.
And they don't understand even who's up for 04. It's, yeah, you did, I know. I read it, but, yeah. There's so much confusion around it.
Yeah, it's a 10-year redistricting thing that confuses a lot of people until they acclimate to the new boundaries.
Going to this fundraiser, that's not who we're voting for. It's amazing how many people have said that over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got.
Gotta get informed, people. Right.
But I just saw him.
Right.
Doing a great job doing outreach.
Yeah.
There is a website you can enter your address and it tells you which districts you're in. So that's probably the best recommendation to give people. If they don't know, enter it and it'll tell you exactly what you can expect on your ballot in terms of the candidates for that district.
Right, but maybe that's some outreach we could do.
We can certainly do that through our, right.
Sign up for people, because I think that's really important, because people still don't get it.
Yeah, understand.
And I'm trying to communicate, but I only get so far.
We can certainly put it in our minutes and send it out to everybody we know and put it on the social media. That's the way the minutes go out. So, yeah, good idea.
Final thing I was asked to mention is, our turnout for June was about 45%, which was about 20% higher than Sacramento.
Oh, wow.
We always have a really, really high turnout compared to the rest.
What are you forecasting for this next election in November? You got any forecasts?
I do, and our staff, we've been planning for it. I'm forecasting around 75%.
Okay.
Really? Because of new people registering, or what?
No, because there's a lot of interest in some of the contests around this. The new congressional district, it's changes in assembly districts. Kevin Kiley not running for assembly, running for Congress. I mean, there's just a lot of things that
Propositions, there's a lot of stuff on there.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know which one's yes and no anymore. There's just a lot of interest. So we're planning for more than that with the way we do.
That's good.
Yeah, that's good.
I'm hoping for 75. I think we'll get there.
The number will definitely be up as opposed to the primary,
If
that's,
we were
that's for sure.
45 in the primary, we're gonna be
Yeah.
a lot higher.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Any other burning questions? I think we've taken a lot of Bill's time and he's had great answers, so, yes. Thank you, and Linda also. And again, their office is always open if you want to go up on a tour, if you want to call them and talk to them. They've been very responsive. Whenever we receive something in my office that somebody's concerned, we refer them to Bill and Linda, and it never comes back. It seems like they get their answer. You know, they may not like it, but they get the answer. And so we've had, I don't think, any repeat inquiries relative to, I'm really concerned about the way the election's running and so on and so forth. So, Maria, last call.
Real quick, how much does a measure like L cost to get on the ballot?
So it doesn't really cost anything to get it on the ballot. It's all about time. Linda would know the answer better, way better than I would. It's more how much it costs to have it on the ballot, and it's based on the number of voters in the contest. So we take the entirety of the 45 contests, and then you get a small portion based on how many are in that particular measure area. So it could be anywhere from $5,000 to the most we've seen in a pretty far-reaching fire district one was about $40,000. So that's kind of a range.
Very good. Thank you again. Really appreciate your attendance and sharing with us all the great information. So, yeah. So with that, let's move on to item 5, supervisor communications. This is going to be short because there isn't a whole lot to report. Central El Dorado Hills, we get asked all the time where that is, and there's nothing new. Nothing's come back to the county that we can respond to. Likewise with Costco, that still seems to be a discussion between EDH 52 and the Costco owners, and that's still in work. There was an item on the board's recent agenda for the homeless shelter at Perks Court. That failed to get the 4 supervisor votes that were required because of funding provisions and also the selection of a contractor to do work without sending it out for bid. That requires 4/5 vote in that particular situation. So we're still looking at other alternatives. There's going to be some closed session discussions, and then something's going to come back to the public, as my feel, before too long. So stay tuned if you're wired into the homeless shelter stuff and what the current thinking is. And then also, I wanted to just let people know that part of our perpetual look for infrastructure within the county, I don't know how many of you are aware of the South Lake Tahoe El Dorado Center, but it was a building that I think it was built in the late 50s or early 60s. The county's trying to maintain it. Health and Human Services is the primary occupant of that, but it's basically end of life, coming apart. The board had talked about, do we just level the building and start over? But there really isn't enough space within that footprint to be able to do that, and parking has always been an issue there. We were able to find a particular piece of property that was for sale that has more than ample parking. It has 4 separate buildings. The county is in final negotiations to acquire that. So the current plan, if all that gets approved, if, right, would be that Health and Human Services would be moved over into those existing buildings, as well as consolidate most of, if not all of the departments in South Lake Tahoe that are now scattered in separate buildings. So the benefit of that is like we would with the sheriff's public safety facility. We get all of those resources, or county resources, that want to be in one facility, in that one facility that has the 4 buildings in it. So I was very pleased to hear that we finally found something, because you might imagine finding real estate in Tahoe is a tough proposition, and particularly the parking situation. Finding something that's got enough parking to accommodate the number of employees and stuff. And this particular one has ample parking. So you'll hear more about that, hopefully, once all those final terms are discussed and finally approved. But that, I think, is a breakthrough, because we'd always struggled with, what are we going to do? Just tear down the building? And whatever happens, that building will probably, the property will probably be sold where the wellness center is now, because it has high value for particular things like a restaurant or something of that type. So that is one of the ways that we can recoup some of the costs for the purchase of this other property, is by selling that and turning it over to somebody who then will probably really build a very attractive building there that will attract tourists and the local residents will be able to use. So we don't know what that's going to end up being, but that's kind of the plan right now, is put it up on the market, sell it, take those revenues in and fold it back into the purchase of this additional property, or the new property. So good news on that one. So with that, unless there's any burning questions you may have that I didn't cover there, I think we'll go ahead and move on. I'm not seeing any. So let's move on to our leadership team progress reports. We always start with public safety. And I don't think we have a sheriff's representative, even though one was identified. I'm not sure what's going on there.
I didn't hear from him.
Okay, well, you need to pulse them and find out if they're gonna be here for the next one. And then the CHP report, we didn't have anybody on that either, right? So Andrew isn't available. So, Chief Johnson, if you would like to give us a fire report in Chief Lilienthal's absence, because I know he was on the strike team and
Yes.
worn pretty thin, I think, probably, so.
Just a little bit. I told him to stay away tonight, go home and get some rest. So we've got this little fire called mosquito fire burning in Placer County and El Dorado County. It looks like on our side, it's moderated quite a bit, especially with the increase in the relative humidities. The winds have kind of died down. So it's mostly just a fuel-driven fire right now, which is to say there's no wind pushing it. The relative humidity helps, and then it's a lot more moisture in the air. But some of those areas that is burning in doesn't have any recorded fire history. And so what that means is everything is probably fairly thick, fairly continuous. It's ripe and is ready to burn. It also has not only just the humidity in the air, but also the humidity within the fuels themselves are at critically low levels. And so they'll burn, they'll readily burn, and they'll carry fire a long ways. The fire is burning out towards the north and the east, towards the old American burn scar and the King burn scar. And a lot of people will say, well, that's going to stop the fire. Well, in all reality, all of the timber is gone. The big timber is gone, but you have a lot of brush that's grown in its place. And that low-lying brush will just have sheets of fire going through it. So it's also very mountainous out in that area. There's lots of canyons, lots of draws. And so it's hard to have direct line built in to stop a fire. So what they're having to do is pull back and look at ridge lines potentially or other areas of topography that they can use to stop the fire. They have to go indirect. So if you can think about the dozers that we would typically bring in to cut these big lines, well, they can't go down steep terrain like that. They would, but just one time. So we don't want that, obviously, right? So what we try to do is find a place that we can get out ahead of it, put a line in place, stop it. So that's what they're working on. There's a new damage assessment map that is available both for the El Dorado County side separate and then the Placer County side as well. I just sat back there and I counted about 16 homes, it looks like, that were a total loss, but there's, a partial loss. There's also affected and then non-affected. So CAL FIRE does a really, really good job in getting those damage assessment teams out there. I think if you tap on it, it'll actually kind of show you a picture of it too. So that's a great resource that was just released within the last couple of hours. Last I checked, it was at 48,000 acres. And so that is a major fire, by any calculation. 48,000 acres, and remember that Eldor fire was a little over 200,000 acres, so this is a large fire for us. On our side, we happened to be up there the other day. We have put together what we call task forces, and what happens is if the fire starts impacting houses and I won't say we didn't anticipate the fire to come over to this side, just not where it did come over. It came over a lot further to the west than we start, really at the origin of the fire. And so it ran right up to the top of the ridge and started impacting homes immediately. I happened to be up there with our task force, which is a team that we put together in case it did jump. We would take resources out of our communities, not backfill them, and just dump them up to the fire because they still didn't have enough resources. So we end up doing that. So for El Dorado Hills, we sent Engine 86 and Engine 84. They're up there for about 19 hours, and they're two of only a few fire engines that were even in that area. So just a big shout out to our guys that went up and they went to work right away. CAL FIRE had a strike team up there with us, and I believe there's one other, so there wasn't a lot of resources at that time. And that's nobody's fault. The challenge is when you have a fire that's burning in 3 or 4 different directions. You have Forest Hill, obviously that's a heavily populated area. That was an impact. It was a priority. But then when it started running up the hill towards Volcanoville and Quintet, now you're having to shift resources. But guess what? You don't get resources from Roseville, the fairgrounds, all the way over to Quintet and Georgetown. From here, it's a long ways to take. You can imagine how long it can get from Roseville. And so that's where the resources were. The other things, we had the Fairview fire burning, we had the Mountain fire burning, and we dumped resources from there, only for them to have a spot fire and it's off and running again, so resources are going back and forth. And there's 2 other fires that started that were significant fires, 5 to 8,000 acres. And so that is the typical California fire season where you start 1 fire, we're good. 2 fires, okay. When you start getting multiple fires, they take resources from each other. And a lot of folks asked about the air resources. Why don't I see more airplanes? If it's super smoky, they can't see, they can't drop, they don't fly. The other piece is anytime you have a large established fire, which we call extended, which this one is, any new fire that comes up, they're going to pull resources away. And the reason is they need to stop those fires and keep them small. Otherwise, we're going to have 10 really big fires, and we certainly don't have the resources for that. So that's kind of, some of the thought process. We did have several tankers multiple times throughout the burning periods where there was what they call a no divert, which is to say that you can't take that, but they can't do that for all the aircraft. At one point at this fire, I think it was Fire Alert or Fire Aware, Flight Aware, we could track all the air resources. I saw 12 airplanes lined up to drop on this fire up here. That is historic. You don't see those kind of resources. McCullen's really close to us. That's a major air attack base, one of the largest in the state, not the largest. And they had 12 airplanes lined up to drop on that fire. So the resources got here quick. We also have folks they were at the Mountain Fire. They've been repositioned. They're here now. On the Mosquito Fire, we also have individuals that are down on the Red Fire down in Yosemite. We have our incident support units that's deployed over at the fairgrounds, and they support all the local government resources coming in. We had Chief Lilienthal deployed out as part of the incident management team here to the Mosquito Fire. He just came back yesterday once the federal team came in this morning. They were actually short because there are so many fires across the nation. The Fed team was short. So they needed our local team to kind of support their team until their folks. This just 3 hours ago, we sent Chief Hall out as the strike team leader. They're still calling for resources on this fire up here. So we're not done. I will tell you on the El Dorado County side, I'm very proud that there's been a lot of direct lines. So if you look at the fire perimeter, anything red, that means that's open line. There's no containment. The fire is just burning at free will. Anything black on there, that means that there is line in there. They've washed it for a while. It's cold. There's no heat signatures. And they have a high level of confidence that even with the wind coming through, it's not going to come back up. So you're starting to see more and more of that. I think I just saw 10% was the number just of containment. But understand that this is a marathon. It's not a race. This fire's not going out tomorrow. The weather has absolutely helped. But as these fires burn, our weather patterns tend to change, right? So if we get another high that comes in and sits over us, that's going to be off to the races again. So the priority right now is over in buttoning up Forest Hill because that's where a lot of the homes are. Volcanoville looks really, really good. We got very lucky. I was out there the day it jumped, and I got to tell you, Station 63 out there, we were all starting, okay, we need to get a plan to retreat out of here. It started to get so bad, and it made an immediate left turn all of a sudden. We don't know how or why, but it did, saving kind of that community and that fire station out there. So when we have fires like this, especially in our own backyards, it's all hands on deck. We did send those 2 engines, and I'm happy to report we made phone calls to our firefighters. They came back and they staffed every single station, so we are 100% that entire time. So kudos to them. With that, this is kind of the time that we start to look at our firefighters, and they're getting tired. Typically, we set them out for 2 weeks at a time, and then we rotate crews. And we're getting about to that point with the one strike team. Other than that, we've worked great with El Dorado County Sheriff's Department. We had a town hall meeting at Sutter's Mill School the other night, very well attended, and we're working very well together. I'll take any questions that you have.
I'll just note that the Caldor fire was 221,000 acres. Yes. This at 48,000 is just shy of 25%. So it's about a little less than a quarter of the size of what Caldor ended up, but we haven't seen the end of it yet. And like you said, the weather conditions really can drive what happens because the terrain is so steep. There's canyons in there you just can't access.
Right.
And again, if resources get pulled up, primarily the aerial resources to go address another small fire so it doesn't become a large fire,
Absolutely.
It's a moving target all the time. So hopefully they'll be able to get higher levels of containment in the next week or 2 weeks, but I don't think we're going to see the end of this one within.
This fire's going to burn
more than that, I think. Yeah.
Exactly. And what we don't want to do is say it can't do X. I think we got lulled into that, in the Caldor fire where everybody said it'll never make it to Tahoe. Never make the Tahoe. And then that changed. Well, there's a lot of granite in the way, and guess what? It made it to Tahoe and then. So I'm not saying this is where that's going, but certainly there's a lot of solid fuel and continuity all the way up in that direction. And so all the fire managers, the incident management team, there's contingency after contingency after contingency lined up, and they're doing real good.
The other comparison is Caldor was like 1,000 structures,
Right.
homes, et cetera. This,
Yes.
this is in the neighborhood of 30 right now off of Volcanoville Road.
Right.
So if we don't get any more penetration, what we've had into El Dorado County, this will be a relatively small number
Absolutely.
compared to what Caldor was. But Placer County is seeing more.
They're going to see more.
As
on
it
that side.
spreads,
Chicken
yeah.
Hawk and some of those other areas
Yep.
were decimated.
so.
over there.
Unfortunately. But thank you, Chief.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any questions for Chief Mo?
All right, thank you.
Great report. Thank you. Yes, Kim.
A lot that's going on with the mosquito fire. We're talking about some great firefighters that are out there. I want to call everyone's attention. Friday, September 16th. On Friday, on September 16th, 1975, Pete Burleson, volunteer firefighter for the El Dorado Hills Fire Department, lost his life.
Yep.
Fire department has honored every year since then. Burleson Memorial Park over here is named after him. And the CSD goes out there every year and cleans up that park a little bit. And our pipes and drums, our honor guard will be there. The chief and our staff will be there. Show your support, not only in memory of Lieutenant Burleson, but also to the men and women of our fire department who are going out there, or going to Mosquito, or going up to all these other fires, and, doing the things that we, except for you, we can't do because we run away. We are told, get out of the way. They rush in to danger. So if you can show up at 8:30 Friday morning, September 16th, at Burleson Memorial Park, it's about a half-hour ceremony, maybe 15 minutes, but it's a way of showing the community that you support our firefighters, and of course, in memory of Lieutenant Burleson.
Tim.
And will you record that again this year? Like, I think last year there was a video recording of part of the presentation.
Yeah, I think we'll ask somebody after we go.
Unfortunately, I'm going to be over in Napa for a convention that Friday, so it isn't going to work for me. But I try to attend as many of those as I can, knowing the heritage of this fire department and the fact that there's only been one casualty in the line of duty, I think is pretty darn incredible. We got to keep that going, though. That's a safety record, and that's because of good training and good command. So, yep. Okay. With that, let's move on to economic development. I can tell you that Glenn is not here this evening. The latest thing we received from CDAC at the county was a report from CDAC on the hemp, the industrial hemp measure that the board will be hearing tomorrow. CDAC was fully supportive of that. The Ag Commission has been fully supportive of it, but there are other entities that are not supportive of it, our Sheriff's Department for one, and others for various concerns. So that's going to be an interesting discussion tomorrow by the board to determine how we move forward. Right now, there's a moratorium on industrial hemp in El Dorado County, but that's going to expire. So the choices the board has is to go to what's called a permanent ban. But it was explained to me that nothing is permanent. Another board, the same board within a short period of time can remove a permanent ban because it really isn't permanent. So that, as opposed to initiating a pilot program that both the Ag Commission and CDAC has recommended. So the board's going to have to wade through all that, make a decision tomorrow on the proper path forward. So if you're interested in industrial hemp and that is a future agricultural product, it might behoove you to go ahead and listen to that part of the board's discussion, or participate if you want, because it's available by Zoom or it's available by being in the Board of Supervisors chambers and making a comment. So that's the one thing I'll report on Glenn's behalf. On economic development, infrastructure, I just wanted to note that we're proceeding to purchase that new property up in South Lake Tahoe. And so actually I jumped to the wrong thing. The last thing I was supposed to report was the CAO search, and we've had 4 panel interviews for the 3 candidates that are there. There will be a closed session discussion by the board tomorrow to determine how that's going to move forward. And so we're not going to be able to share anything for a little while on that, but at least we've gotten that process started and we'll see what it's going to lead to. So that covers those things. So John, any other infrastructure reports?
Yeah, the only else I'll mention is that we've been talking, Supervisor Heidel and I, with DOT Director on a master plan in the South Latrobe area. And so they're working on a draft. We should be seeing something here, I think, in a few weeks. Again, and that's to get, we're looking for some relief traffic-wise to hopefully get out to the future Empire Ranch interchange, all the stuff that's going on there. So with the growth that not if, but will happen down South Latrobe, that we have another way out to Highway 50. So that's in the mix, but we haven't seen anything yet, but DOT is working on that. So I don't know if you have any questions for traffic stuff or whatever.
I'll add to that one real quickly. I got a call from Raphael today. He's ready to meet with Sacramento County. So I called Supervisor Sue Frost, and that meeting will be set up very short term here. So
great.
We're on that path. Next step has happened. So yes, please.
Yeah, I know that the county has received a lot of, is it federal funds or state funding for road improvement specifically? I just read something about that, and I'm just wondering.
Road maintenance is supposed to come from the state, from
Okay.
sales, from gasoline tax revenues. That's what's
Okay.
supposed to pay for all the maintenance.
Looked like there was some sort of grant or program for
Federal
road
grants out there,
improvement.
but those are more capital improvements as opposed to just, maintenance.
Okay,
So if you're putting in a new roadway, they would definitely apply.
okay.
And that was one of the things I was told is they looked at the grant.
I'm just wondering
opportunity,
if they're gonna,
this
start
routing,
improving
and it
some of the
turns out
roads.
it's too late in the cycle. They decided to try to submit it. It wouldn't be well qualified from the standpoint of not enough time to put it together.
Mhm.
But there's other grants that are coming from the federal government as part of that infrastructure bill.
Yeah,
that we will be eligible for. It's just a case of getting everything together.
because we
Because you wanna
certainly,
go
we
at it-
certainly need those, so I hope we
Yes.
are aggressive in trying to get those.
So what I was told is Sacramento County is on board, the city of Folsom's on board, El Dorado County is obviously the initiator of it. So if we can get those three entities to agree on an approach when we submit grant applications, it's going to have a whole lot more weight with the federal government or state, in terms of getting the funding. So good news there. We just have to try to keep it moving and not let it get stalled somewhere. So
You all see the work that's going on in El Dorado Hills Boulevard,
Yes, that's
Right.
great.
all the preparation.
yes, right. And we put information on that in terms of the timing of it and stuff. So hopefully that's out there and
That's,
being absorbed.
That's a process for right now, and then long term, there's more work to be done in terms of the actual surface treatment. And
Right.
For the different communities,
Yeah.
The whole process. I think Robbie will talk about that when we have it.
Right.
So on our website, I believe it's still out there. We have information on all the planned major road maintenance that DOT has for District 1. So this gets to subdivisions, for instance, Shadowfax, which is off of Green Valley Road, if you're familiar with that, that's scheduled for some improvements. And I know that's been about a 5-year, 4.5-year, whatever, search to try to come up with the funding to do that. So it's now elevated to the point that's going to happen. But that information on where the subdivision improvements in terms of actual road maintenance are going to be done is available on my webpage. So you can go in there and pull it up. Yeah.
We have a copy, of it. We'll back up to it.
Okay, good. So it's available if you want to go, chase it down. Let's move to good governance.
In the lengthy meeting, the Charter Review Committee has scheduled its next public meeting, which is the only kind of meeting we have, on September 19th at 5 p.m. It will be in the board chambers. It will also be on Zoom. The minutes will be posted like any public meeting is, and the Zoom connection is going to be there. At the last meeting, the different topics were mentioned. Those are the topics that were generally reviewed, and staff was asked to solicit input from knowledgeable parties relative to those topics. There are 6 of them. Generally, they revolve around the elected officers, term limits, and potential consolidations. And but everything is still very open. We are soliciting ideas from the public for matters that they would like to charter or added to the charter. And so participating or listening in on the meeting would be a good way of seeing what's happening and then possibly offering ideas as well. September 19th, 5 p.m. on Zoom or in the supervisor's chamber.
All right, thank you, Richard. Appreciate that. Healthy communities. I think we've told everybody for extended period now. Next week, a week from today, we will be holding that special mental health forum. This is a third in the series that we've done. I think we got confirmation from all the participants. So
Almost all, yeah.
okay, so we will have the El Dorado Community Foundation, Health Foundation, which has a new facility they're building on Missouri Flat Road, here to talk about what are the services they offer, in particular for mental health. We'll also have the tribe presenting information on what their services are, because again, those are public services that are offered from their health center. So we'll be describing that, and then we have a couple of other things. We'll have Nicole Ibrahimi Nguyen as our Director of Behavioral Health. She'll be giving us an update on what the county's done since the first meeting when we got started down this path. And there has been some significant decisions made, some funding put in place to increase the size of the organization, but also do some things in terms of mobilization for mental health. And then the other one is we have a group that wants to talk about, it's same time what they're calling themselves. It's not Housing El Dorado and it's not NAMI. It's not Housing El Dorado, but they're going to be describing the things that they're looking at with respect. Oh, it's a clubhouse. There's a club is what it's called, but it's primarily for patients who are schizophrenic, but it doesn't have to be restricted to that. But it's a Club International is what the name of the organization is. They've set up different centers across the United States. We're talking about the viability of bringing one to El Dorado County and setting that up just specifically for that kind of mental health treatment. And there's a committee that's been formed that's actually advancing that. So they're also going to make a brief presentation. And I'm sure they're going to encourage anybody that's interested to volunteer, get involved, whatever, because that's the way El Dorado County works. We don't have enough staff to do all this stuff, so a lot of it has to be done by people who are willing to volunteer. And thank you for all those who have been willing to volunteer in the past, because we have some great committees and commissions that are getting that work done that would otherwise be very difficult to do. So APAC, I understand the meeting got canceled, but go ahead, John.
We didn't get canceled, we canceled it.
Okay.
So we don't, we meet the second Wednesday of every month. If there's nothing to talk about, there's no project development. Like, we're looking at the Supervisor Idle had today, nothing new on Central, nothing new on Costco. There's several other projects that are just, we know they're coming, there's just nothing new to report. Instead of having people come out and spend an evening with us, which we love. It's just easier not to have that meeting this month. However, last month we did have 3 topics that we talked about here in this room. It was an informational discussion about other volunteer advisory committees in El Dorado County. And we also talked a little bit about our APAC comments for a TAC meeting that was taking place for the proposed Saratoga neighborhood retail, or Sophia Parkway neighborhood retail on the corner of Green Valley and Sophia Parkway. And just a few other updates that, some projects that APAC has looked at in the past. So our meeting next month will be October 12th. It'll be here in this building. It'll be at 6:30, available here or virtually via Zoom like we're doing right now. We do have Rafael Martinez, the Director of Transportation for the county, as a scheduled guest speaker. And he's going to discuss a little bit about what you're probably going to see on the ballot in November, being TOT increase for the western slope and what the how that's supposed to work, the funds raised by that transit tax would be to fund, it'd be dedicated solely to road maintenance. So he's going to talk about how that works, what maybe the county would expect to generate here in the western slope. There's another ballot measure that will be for the Tahoe area. It will generate significantly more money than we thought. But
Initially. That doesn't say that it ends there, because the more hotels we get, the more TOT tax we get on the west slope.
So there's TOT tax is something that is typically paid by people who don't live here. So that's a tax, nobody likes that word, but that's a tax that maybe residents would be more amenable to considering. So it does have impact on the hotels and Airbnbs and, events like that, business like that. So Rafi will be here to talk about that, in October.
I'll just mention there was a Citizens Advisory Committee that's required with that. If the measure passes, there will be a citizens group established to look and make sure that that money is going to proper use within DOT for the specified purposes. So I think that was a big part of
And
making sure it works.
And, well, and Rafi will explain it. You know, there are two ballot measures, one not here and one that affects electric flow. So how those languages look on the ballot and how it would work for the county, they'll share all that with us. So, see you here in October on the 12th.
Very good. Cindy?
Okay, happenings here in El Dorado Hills. The farmers markets are continuing through October 30th and Town Center every Sunday from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. This Friday, the 17th. The Snowline Hospice Community Donation Event. They're having it at the marketplace at Town Center behind Wells Fargo. They're looking for some donations for their group, and that they're going to be there from 9 to 2 on that day. Also on September 17th, it's the final El Dorado Hills CSD concert that they're calling it the El Dorado Hills Summer Fest. They're going to have all kinds of great events. It's at the El Dorado Hills CSD from 4 o'clock until 9:30 that evening. They're going to have magic shows, petting zoos, rock climbing, concert, they're even have a mechanical bull, beer and wine garden. So there's all kinds of stuff, games and rides.
So 17th is Saturday. So it's, yeah, it's a
Okay, good.
Saturday level event.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So both of those are Saturdays. So yeah, that's going to be a great event. And then on the 18th, the Brickyard down in El Dorado Hills Town Center, they're having a cornhole tournament in the Stephen Young Amphitheater, and that will be from 1 to 4 p.m. On the September 24th, there's the Community Cleanup Day, which is amazing. You get everything out of your house. And that'll be at the Hills Church, and that's from 8 to 2 p.m. And then on October 1st, it's going to be the second annual Walk with Austin Triathlon, Tri-T-R-Y. It's for kids with special needs up to 18 years old. They do a swim and a bike and a run. And that's at the El Dorado Hills Community, the CSD. It's at the park and the pool, and that's from 8 a.m. to 11 or 8 to 11 a.m. that morning. And the registration is at the El Dorado Hills CSD there. And all this information is on Supervisor Heidal's webpage on the county website. So.
I'm trying to remember if you mentioned the fact that there is a hazardous waste cleanup coming up on, I think it's the 19th. What is it? It's, no, it isn't.
85.
It's the 19th.
No, that's the,
It's on the Saturday, so it must be the 17th. But anybody who's interested in getting rid of your hazardous waste, fluorescent tubes, oil, paint, electronics, it's Station 86.
Yeah, on Bass Lake Road.
On Bass Lake Road.
Across from Hollow Road.
Runs from 9 to noon, I believe, but it's by appointment only.
Yeah,
So
okay,
if you're
yeah.
interested, you have to submit an email or call the County Environmental Management and request an appointment. So I'll remind you, the appointment is necessary. So, but I think they're expecting quite a bit of turnout, and they've run very successfully out at Station 86 for a long time, and hopefully it's a way for the community to get rid of their excess hazardous waste, and it doesn't just end up in the trash bin or scattered on the side of the road. So be encouraged as well. All right, very good. Thank you. Any go back from anybody on the leadership team? All right, so moving on, our next meeting for the community council is Monday, October the 3rd. Our guest speaker will be Karen Coleman. She's our El Dorado County Treasurer and Tax Collector, and she's made several changes in their approach for investment of the monies that the county is holding, not only for the county, but special districts, fire districts, the CSD, any number of entities have their money at the county. And so they're looking at how do we get the maximum interest rate, or whatever it is, bond rate. And so she's got some new investments that they're looking at, and they're moving forward on that. They're actually coming back to the board to get approval for some things. And then the other thing she has done is she's been able to put a QRC code on your tax bills. So if you want to get to that level of information, you can take in the QRC code and pull up all the information that details it further, I guess, what's on your tech. So she'll be here to explain that to us. So again, another technology advancement to make people aware of how they get information on their particular tax assessments and history or whatever this may be, that may be linked to. So we'll all learn that one, because I've not seen the presentation on the QRC one. I've read an announcement that came out, but it really gets down to understanding what is embedded with that data source. So we'll figure that out. So with that, if I'm not seeing anything else, we are going to adjourn the meeting. It's a little after 7 o'clock. Thank you again for your patience, your participation, and we'll look forward to seeing you back on October 3rd. And don't forget to vote in November.